Welcome to the Man Up God's Way podcast, a show that dives into the real, raw, and relevant issues for men in their faith, life, and community. Now, your host, Jody Burkeen.
And here we are, another Monday night, Man Up Monday podcast. I want to welcome everyone with us, and we're really excited about it. Again, my name is Jody Burkeen. I'm your host for the Man Up Monday podcast.
Yeah. I wanted to give you a drum roll, brother. I was feeling it.
Did you feel? Yeah, there you go. Well, I've got a special guest tonight. Fragoza is what we're going to call him.
What's up?
Glad you're here, man. Thank you for
yeah.
joining me, and we'll talk a little bit about your story and how you got here and what you're doing and when you're going to grow up and all that.
Never. That's it. That's all we got for today. Ain't never going to happen.
Never going to happen. That's great. And then in the background, we got Gabe. What's up, Big Daddy?
What's going on?
Hey, glad you're here, man. Rusty, how you doing, brother?
Doing good.
Awesome.
Doing really good.
We got our production crew in the back, and just excited to be here again on a Monday night. Want to encourage our listeners, you can download our podcast for the previous weeks on any podcast platform that's out there. We're on Spotify, we're on Podmatic, we're on iTunes, Apple, Apple Store, Google Play, Amazon, iHeartRadio, you name them, we're on them, and we'd love for you to go and subscribe to your favorite format and download our podcast and listen to us at any given time.
What week is this?
This is our 5th week.
Been plugging along, man.
Yeah,
more than a month.
Yeah, exactly. Going on more than a month, and really excited about it. Our growth is continuing to get bigger and bigger. When we jumped up to number 6 on the Christian podcast world last week, and
nice.
It's been really good, and we're just trying to continue to move and groove and let God do some amazing things. So it's been pretty good.
Heck yeah. Well, I mean, last week, it's a tough follow, man. You got me after Getter, man.
Getter, yeah, Paul
having
Getter.
him on, that was great to be in the room for that and just hear him, wax about what he does and all the above. But yeah, man, this is exciting.
This is exciting, and I'm glad you're a part of it too. It's gonna be real fun. Ben, who is normally with me, is on vacation this week. He and his wife went down to New Orleans. Nolans, is that how you say it?
Nolans.
Nolans, that's my Saints.
Nolans.
I got my hat on
yeah,
right
you got
here.
the hat, yeah.
Got my hat.
He's down in Nolans, and I hope he's putting on some poundage with all the food that he's eating.
Dude,
For our contest.
Yeah,
yes.
we have a contest going on, biggest losers contest. He's already the biggest loser, but he's hoping to lose weight. So at the same time, but,
they got some food down there, man.
Yeah,
There's
they
some
do. Oh my
great
gosh.
restaurants.
Yeah, well,
Jambalaya and
they got
gumbo.
food here because I obviously can't quit eating. I haven't lost a pound. I think I gained a pound last week, 221. So we'll talk more about that later. But me and Rusty and Ben are trying to lose some weight. You need to put some on.
Oh,
That's what
man.
you need to do.
I have not. We were talking about it before the show started. I haven't lifted in a while. So this is not, I mean, we can get into it a little bit. I had some health issues. I have an autoimmune, come to find out.
Right.
And it puts me down.
Oh, man,
it puts me down. Well, we were talking about it might even be, allergic reaction to too much physical stimulus.
Right.
Physical, yeah.
That's my problem.
Like,
I'm allergic
I mean,
to physical.
It's laughable, but it really is tough.
Yeah,
Coming from, I'm
real.
an All-American athlete, wrestled my entire life, and then to leave that, and actually that's what stopped me from competing. I want to say it was 2013 U.S. Open is what I was training for. Is the first time I broke out with it. They actually thought it was hand, foot, and mouth disease because I was a trainer at the time, and gym funk nonsense. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'll get it on the next time around. That was my second U.S. Open, and I was like, okay, well, next time around we'll go. And the plan was, my path was try to make the world team, try to make an Olympic ticket eventually, or at least get on the ladder.
Right,
those were the goals ever since I was a kid. And man, I couldn't kick it. I was actually sitting with one of my friends, and we were going through my Instagram back in 2013 because I was they made the comment like, dude, you're skinny dude. I was like, you don't understand. I used to be jacked. Like I used to be shredded. So I was looking for pictures, and it was almost sad for me to see the last picture I had posted was just before that U.S. Open, just before I broke out. Literally 4 months later, I kept popping up with it, and it wouldn't go away. I had to quit my job, personal training, and like you just see this blank spot in the Instagram, and then the next picture is suit and tie, me going to work.
There you go. Yeah.
Took a corporate job and had to I had to find a way to make money because
that's called adulthood. You know,
oh, bro, I'm fighting it. I'm fighting it. I'm fighting it so hard.
I know it. Ever since we started this stupid contest, you know, like I'm about 20 pounds heavier than I've been in quite some time. And COVID didn't help me out. I told this last couple of weeks ago, or actually when we started talking about the, you know, I thought going into 2020 and with shutdown, I would come out looking like Brad Pitt and sound like Charles
Fight Club
Spurgeon.
Brad Pitt too.
You know, I was going to be a theologian and lean and mean, but just the other day, I'm watching my daughter. I've got twin 11-year-olds, and I was watching their basketball game, and or her basketball game. And I've got two older kids that are 19 and 21. And I was watching my daughter, and I'm coaching her from the sideline, which is not the greatest thing for a coach to hear. You know, like the parents are coaching online, but she listens to me, and
that's why they don't like it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm telling her what to do, and I'm yelling at her, and then she does it, and she steals the ball, and she runs down and does a layup, and she's running down the court, and she gives me a thumbs. You know, she looks in the stand and gives me a thumbs up, and all of a sudden I had this massive, it felt like just an emotion go over me. Like I literally got tears in my eyes thinking, man, I'm 52. I've got 11-year-olds. I've got 19-year-olds, a 21-year-old. And I'm thinking, man, I just want to be there for my grandkids. And I want to be there her senior year when she's playing basketball and she can look up in the stand. And so...
And you're going to say, nice job.
Yeah, exactly.
You did it well.
Well, I don't want to be that. You know, like I want to be that fit, 60-something-year-old, 70-year-old, whatever, with my grandkids and my younger kids. And I want to be there for them, you know. And so, anyway, we left the basketball game and drove straight to the local gym, and I joined a gym.
Oh, stop it. You said, I'm getting in there.
Yeah, I'm getting. So here's my prayer is that, number one, that was a conviction, because when God convicts me, man, dude, there's nothing stopping me. Like I go straight to the
well, there's no...
That I'm hoping that conviction was there, and it wasn't just Jody, waking up.
Well, there is no halfway with you.
No,
it's pretty much full go. I haven't known you that long, but I love it.
Right.
Because I'm that way too.
So once I get my teeth on something, man, I'm not letting go. So I say all that to say I hope Ben's listening right now because he's in trouble.
Mike Schindler said every coach's worst nightmare is a dad coaching from the stands.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I coached wrestling for a while. And even... shout out to Zaleski, even an assistant coach from the sidelines sometimes. I was that for him sometimes. He's like, hey, shut up.
We talk about coaching. It's funny because my daughter is doing archery, and their coach tell them, you ignore your parents and don't listen to them whatsoever or talk to them whatsoever. And it's funny because they don't. Like, when they get into archery, it's like you try to talk to them, and they're like, coach said not to talk to you.
So I'm praying that I've got conviction now instead of just a desire. Like, I've had this desire to do something. Now, if God convicted me, dude, it's all over. So I'm going to start lifting, taking my kids and all that kind of good stuff.
Shredded.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting bruised.
So me and Gabe are going to get shredded, right?
Got to get bruised, big and huge.
Yeah, exactly.
Big and huge, baby.
I think the last time I lifted was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and I go in thinking I'm still in high school, 18 years old. I throw 225 up on the bar. I'm gonna be, I'm gonna show how strong I am. Luckily I'm still pretty strong, strong back, weak mind kind of deal. And I threw 225 up there, about choked on it. Nice. I got it up, but I thought I was going to eat the bar, there for a second. So
that's me. I've never had a lot of upper body strength. The blower is another story, but upper body about 175. I push that, and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Not me. So, yeah. So Fragoza, I'm excited. Our very first podcast, I talked about how you and I had met, and
we met me doing a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So you were actually on a podcast, and John Simmons, and you were doing, just talking about it. And he's a good buddy of mine here in St. Louis, and I was just watching it, and I saw you talking about your music. And so next thing I Google you, and I found the one song. We'll talk about it here in a little bit, but just really just drew me to who you were. And so I think I sent you a text or an email, probably just an email because I didn't have your phone at the time. And I just said, hey, dude, I'd like to have you come to my church. And we played phone tag and email tag for almost 2 months, 3 months maybe, wasn't it?
It was 2020 still. Like we were, I think I've known you for a year.
It was at the very end of 2020.
Yeah.
Because the everything had kind of just opened up again, and so we were really wanting to kind of maybe have a concert for the community and stuff like that.
Yeah, we were talking about doing. I think we originally talked about doing a worship night.
Right.
And I had been, even that podcast, I had been praying. I've really been on hiatus for 4 years. Just a little bit about. For those of you who don't know who I am or what I'm all about, I was in California, and I had that corporate job that I had talked about, suit and tie job. So I left the gym world, left wrestling, suit and tie for 2 years, and that's about all I could take.
Right.
Bailed on that, and I was doing music full time. And so I did music full time for 3 years, and then God called me out here. And so I'd been on hiatus for like it's 4 years now and a little bit, but it had been 3 years.
Right.
And I was praying, man. I was praying for God to open some doors. And that's why I've been so excited about, the partnership that we talked about making and working with you guys more, is because it's been just an answer to prayer of just like, man,
Amen.
Some fervent prayer of like, all right, man, I'm here in Missouri. What are we doing?
Right.
He's like, wait. I was like, well, no, man, I'm here, brother. Let's go. What are we gonna do? Because I'm like you. You called me out of California, moved me 2,000 miles away from all my friends, family, anybody I know.
I think that's St. Louis for you, because 21 years ago, God brought us here. I didn't know it was God bringing us here because I wasn't walking with God at the time, but I expected to be here 3 years and then traveling on. That was 21 years later, I'm still here. Man. So God's got me here for a reason. I keep threatening, you're not going to send me to Hawaii to be a missionary.
Yeah. Hey, man, I was just there.
Can't make me.
I was just there a year ago, and man, there's some struggles there. They need some people there.
Yeah, exactly.
They need some people there.
Exactly. Yeah, there's struggles because they're $8 a gallon for milk. So,
from what I heard from some of the Christian ministries that are there, is the island, what you cannot do. So you can talk about Jesus, but you cannot talk bad about any other. Like you can't say that, like
the island gods.
The island gods,
like
you can't say that they're not gods. So that's like extremely frowned upon. So you can't say like, hey, he is the Elohim.
Right.
Like he is the God of gods. Right. It's like, whoa. Now we're stepping on heritage and all the above. So there's some struggles there, man. Yeah. I got to tell this story. The first night I was there, if you've never been to Hawaii, near the beach during night, there are birds that scream bloody murder. And it is the most terrifying thing I've ever heard, ever. It was creepy, man. The best I can describe it, these birds, and I think we figured out what it was. Right. I think there's guarding their nests, and I think there's rats taking their eggs.
Kidding.
This is if anybody knows what these birds are, if this is really happening, this is what we think as a group, collective. We decided these birds are making noises like this, and it's just creepy. And I think they're trying to keep the rats away. Right. And then every once in a while, I think a rat will get an egg, and you hear like, just like this blood curdling baby scream, and we're all lying in bed like this with our eyes wide open. I thought Hawaii was a paradise.
Exactly.
What are we doing here?
Something's going to drag you off the beach into the water.
Nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
Nightmare.
Well, that's good. So, we hooked up, and then we had you play at our last conference, first conference after COVID, and it was just an amazing. We had about 150 guys, and great opportunity for you to share your music. And I really liked your style, how you brought in, just the storytelling behind it, the way that you just, sat down. We'll talk a little bit about that too, but, that's kind of our first, getting to know each other. And then, man, God just started doing some major stuff there where, we're looking at the whole, Man Up umbrella, the Man Up God's Way umbrella, and how this music section, or this music category, it just keeps coming up and keeps coming up and keeps coming up. And, we're looking, hopefully in the future to have, 2 or 3 major conferences a year where we, do the conferences and you do the music and all of that kind of stuff. And so really excited about what God's doing. But, more importantly, I want our listeners to, they know me, they've been following me for 10 years. Because we are going into our 10th year. This is our 10th year as Man Up God's Way, and God just keeps blessing us. So why don't you tell, your story? Like, let me just ask, how did you get into, let's just start with the music. How did you get into music?
So my mom, and I'm going to apologize in advance. Speaking of my mom, she always used to call that the singer's cough. Like constantly. I can't stop. It's not ever going to get fixed. It's just rough, but I apologize in advance. People who are listening to this, like, God, this guy needs to clear his throat. Yeah. So my mom, Connie Quillen, she was actually a recording artist in the late 70s, or I guess it would be mid 70s, late 80s, early 80s. And I grew up singing. So I grew up in church, grew up singing. And, I grew up literally just walking around the house. I just loved it. Always singing. And I would hear my mom, "You went flat." I'm like, all right, well, I'm just enjoying myself. No, if you're going to sing it, you're going to sing it right. So she kind of led me down that path. And, just a little backstory. My mom currently has Alzheimer's. She hasn't known who we are in a very long time. She's in a home, and that's been very difficult for me because this is someone who showed me the direction. Right. Like, hey, this is a possibility. You can do this. And now as I try to navigate the industry and I try to navigate doing it, I don't have her as a resource anymore. And it's just very, that's probably the toughest part for me is like, she doesn't get to see that come to fruition. She had forgotten who we were, long before I did my first album. Right. I think she went to the studio with me when I did my first album, and that was back in probably 2000, I would say, maybe 14, 13, 2000. Yeah, it had to be 13, 14. And we had moments, where she said, "Hey, this is great." I don't know if she knew who I was, but she was like, she's in the studio. She's happy, right? She doesn't care who it is. That's great. But I did music, so I left that corporate job. Right? I grew up in the church. I left the church completely. I guess I'll go backwards a little bit. Grew up in the church, left the church completely around 18, and I grew up very Levitical. Okay. Like, do it and I'll spank you. Right. If you drink, you can't go to heaven. If you smoke, you can't go to heaven.
All law-based.
All law-based. And then now, like, as a, I would say I'm probably a Reformed Christian. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite theologians, C.S. Lewis, is a pipe smoker. Right. And I fancy myself a cigar smoker. So I'm like, I'm in good company. We're going to keep it in there. But I grew up believing that, like, you're going to hell. I mean, my church was even like these other churches in our community, they're going to hell too. I'm like, man, it's going to be a tiny group up there when we get to heaven. Yeah. It's going to be small. Now, I do want to give them some grace because all that came from a place of love, right? First off. And secondly, that's how I perceived it. That might not be how it was being taught. Right. But man, that's how I took it. So I didn't want anything to do with that. When you're 14 years old and you hear, you say, don't commit adultery. I say, if you even think about a woman, right, you've committed adultery. I'm 14 years old. I'm like, oh no. Yeah, exactly. I've committed adultery like 30 times. Yeah. And we're in the middle of church.
2 days. Yeah, exactly.
We're in trouble, man. Yeah. I'm going straight to hell. So I left for that reason. And it was sex, drugs, rock and roll, college. I wilded out. There was still some there was still some hesitation there as far as like I didn't go crazy, but I went pretty hard.
Right.
I mean, the tipping point for me was after college, graduated, went out to Hollywood, and things went great. 2010, had a manager, had an agent, had a record deal,
Right.
all within a couple months of showing up, actually. I showed up, had a girlfriend, like everything just kind of fell into place. Shout out to my little brother, William. He paid for a year. He paid for me to live. I paid my rent consistently because I told him, hey, man, if I'm going to make it, I need to focus. All these
Right.
people I'm moving into this house. All these people are focused on like making money and then trying to do auditions.
Right.
I'm going to go and I'm going to grind. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was great to call him like a couple months. I was like, got a record deal. The wicked easy, right? Got a manager. I think month number 4 I played the American Music Awards. Was it their pre-party? I think it was their pre-party. That same year I danced at the official Grammys after party.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So like things were like,
Wow.
things
Yeah.
were going, right? And man, it all just like gone in a flash, right? And it came so quick
Right.
that I was like, oh, I'll get it back. Like, it took me 3 or 4 months to get it. It'll take me 3 or 4 months to find it again. It doesn't. Like, people who are out there, they'll
Yeah.
tell you, you can go. I mean, that was a shot, and it just fell apart. My manager actually was based out of Europe, and his work visa expired. And so he was like, I got to go back to Europe, but our record label's there. If you get yourself to Europe, you know, it's $1,000
Right.
plane ticket. We got you from there. I got a studio. We'll put you up. You know, I had no music yet. I was a unsigned artist other than him. You know, he had
Right.
signed me, but no records or anything. He had just seen me play in an audition one time. And he was like, dude, we're going to sign you for sure. You just start following me around. He was booking me gigs at all these like Hollywood elite parties, and I was
Right.
playing and making some money. Anyway, all that went away. And I just fell into this deep, deep, deep depression and not a follower of Christ, right? And I was staying in my buddy's parents' laundry room / garage on like an old mattress. That's where I was sleeping, right? That was my home.
Right.
I had moved out of that house. Wasn't going to make my brother pay, you know, for stuff if I wasn't actually getting signed and making money. And I was thinking about just taking my life. You know, I was thinking about ending it. And I remember praying this prayer of, listen, I don't know if you're real, but if you are, you got 2 weeks. Show up, don't,
Right.
doesn't matter. I'm out of here in 2 weeks. So you better speak to me, whatever. Don't ever, like, man, don't do that. He'll show up.
I was
man.
kidding. Don't do that, because I did that when I was sitting on the beach in Africa doing the same kind of thing, where it was like almost ready just to walk away, and it's like, you got to show up, and then he definitely shows up.
Yeah.
He shows up in some big crazy ways, and he really started speaking into me. And I try not to. This is another callback to my mom. She gave me so much wisdom. I try not to share everything that God speaks to me and promises me until it comes to fruition. Because I
Right.
feel like there's a Jordan Peterson quote: "Careful who you share good news with."
Right. Exactly.
You know, and so I hold some of that stuff pretty close, and I'll get to share some of the miracles in this podcast that, you know, that he's said and then brought to fruition. And so one of the things that so I'm praying, he shows up, and I'm like, whoa, there is definitely a God. This is freaking me out, right? This guy's speaking to me,
Right.
or I'm going crazy.
Right.
Right, which is very possible at the time. You know, think about taking your own life. Maybe you are going crazy. So I was working at a MMA gym as a coach there and a trainer, and I had applied for the grad program at Cal Baptist to go back to school. And I was praying, and I'm like, okay, God, you're real. You've spoken to my life. Like, you showed up. I'm like reading my Bible every day in this like laundry room. Like, oh my goodness, like it's coming to life. My brother, he told me, so I kind of walked him through this, and I was like, I know there's a God. He spoke to me.
Right.
what do I do now? And he's like, and he just went through, he just went through the ringer, went through a divorce, and he walked his own path back to God. So he's maybe 4 or 5 months ahead of me,
Right.
maybe 6 months ahead of me.
cool.
And he's like, I got you, dude. Read Romans. Just go read Romans.
Oh,
and I'm like, okay, like, and I'm like, yeah, but dude, church was bull crap. I didn't say bull crap.
Right.
I just found you.
Right.
And he's like, I know. It's nothing what you remember. Like if you just go read
Right.
it, it'll come off the page. And so I start reading things like there is no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. And I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. I don't know what condemnation means. I'll look it up. And condemnation means a strong distaste for one's actions. There is no strong distaste for one's actions once you're in Jesus. Well, hold on a minute. That's completely different than what I was taught.
Right.
I was taught this, do it and I'll spank you.
Yeah.
You have a beer, you're going straight to hell. Then I find out, really blew my mind because I'm so, legalistic, that Jesus drank wine. And I'm like, oh my God,
Right.
this is so much different. Now, what I'm not doing, I'll look right at the camera, I'm not promoting, gluttony or drunkenness or just getting wild. That's not what I'm not opening up the coffers for that. But what I'm saying is the legalism that I grew up with was shattered,
Oh,
right?
totally.
And I had
Right.
this whole new view on God. So I go back to grad school. I end up being an assistant coach over one of the assistant coaches, second assistant to Arsen Alexanian, good friend, Lenny Zaleski, great coach. And again, shout out to him. He had to deal with me. I was still young, full of fire, and probably messing up half his matches, yelling from the sidelines. That's even worse than a parent.
Hey,
Hey, you should do this, and he's like, shut up. You should not do that. But man, I have never had a job where, and we've gone back and talked about it. Like I've never laughed so much. There was so much joy because I had just found Christ. I had a boss who was a believer. I lived with him. Actually, I moved out of that basement into his house.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
That's
moved out of that basement into his house for maybe 5-6 months until someone in the master's program that I had met in those 5 months, they had just bought a house. They were like, hey, if you live here, I'll let you live for free. You just do all the work. So that God's just opening doors, making things happen. I have a godly mentor of sorts and a boss who's, man, this guy, when you talk about, dedication and discipline, 5 a.m. every morning, I can hear him making coffee. It made me feel lazy. So I started getting up at 5 a.m. with him to read. And he was reading these dense, theological books too, kind of like N.T. Wright stuff.
Right, exactly.
the ones that you've been jumping in. I've read some of his stuff now too. But man, I've never had so much joy. We
That's
laughed
awesome.
every day. We had so much fun. We had pranks and everything.
Isn't it amazing? If you think about, the way that you grew up and the way that you looked at people, and you're thinking, what a joyless group of people. And then all of a sudden you actually receive Jesus Christ, and the fullness of Jesus, oh, that's what it is. And I think a lot of times, especially when we're younger, what we look at is we don't want to change. So we chalk it up to legalism. We chalk it up to, they don't understand me. We chalk it up to all these things at 52 years old, I can look back now and I see the kids that are coming, through not only my own kids, but, the kids that come through the church. And it's kind of like, if you could just grab Jesus right now, your joy will be fulfilled, to that part. And it's not, there is a lot of change that goes on, and he's going to ask you to do a lot of things, but you do those because now you understand the joy, you understand the love, you understand the grace, you understand the mercy, because he's bestowed that upon you all of a sudden, not only through his word, but through his spirit, where you feel that a little bit different. And it's kind of like, I look back on my life and I go, man, I just wish I could have grabbed a hold of that at 12 years old instead of doing what I did.
Well, I have those thoughts too, but then I realized that if I didn't have the messed up stuff, then I wouldn't have
No,
the same.
exactly,
I
yeah.
wouldn't. I wouldn't write the same.
It's your yeah. You're right. You're right.
know,
It's
my
your
music would-
testimony. I
it'd be
mean, that's
different.
God knew exactly what He was doing. It wasn't.
Yeah.
A lot of times I tell this story quite a bit. With Gabe and Evie when they were younger, I used to hold their head. They were really little and they were just walking. And I could hold their head. Just enough that I could let them, feel like they were walking on their own a little bit, and then I'd grab their head and I'd turn them around. Oh, you can't go that way, and no, you can't go that way. You can't, so they would walk off, and I'd move them, and
You bridled them basically.
yeah, exactly. If you look at the path that they were walking, it could be at the mall or in the park or whatever. I just didn't want them to get away from me far enough that I couldn't get a
ground,
hold
yeah.
of them. I always relate that to the way that's the way that God was in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I look back when I left the church at 12 years old, I see His hand in all the stupidity, but it was one of those moments where I could just, I look back on my life and I could see that He was grabbing my head, just enough to get me to St. Louis, like there's no reason I should be in St. Louis other than God Himself.
Agreed with me as well.
You know what I mean? You know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm saying. So it's that moment where He just turned my head and put me over here, and the next thing I know, I go to this church, I give my life to the Lord, and 17 years later, I'm preaching, I'm teaching. God has just really moved in our lives, in my whole family's life, and it's that moment where you can just tell that He's maneuvering your life. And I say all that to say is that you had to go through those things in order for you to be where you are today and to write like you write.
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely. I think it's definitely shaped my music. It's so different than what you hear in church, what my mom did. It's such a different path of the way that I communicate my walk.
Right.
But
I'm a lyrics guy.
yeah,
So I really like lyrics. Like
it has to be. Yeah,
I have to hear I don't even feel the beat, so to speak, until I hear the lyrics. Like the lyrics have to move me, and I'm listening to lyrics. I know the lyrics and of all the songs, and I really like. I would almost say it go as far as love. I love your lyrics,
thanks.
because
man.
they do come from a place of brokenness. They do come from a place of sometimes darkness, and sometimes there's that moment of joy in your writing as well. And I really enjoy the words, and I think that's all because of the walk that you've had to walk.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of the stubbornness that He put in me that brings forth this struggle. I identify with people like David. I identify with people like Paul, who have this darkness in them, that have this struggle. Paul says, if I agree with the law, then it's not me who's sinning anymore. The things I do, I don't want to do.
Right.
I wish I could stop doing these things. This is actually a really good example of how the stubbornness kind of plays in, and that's how I ended up at Cal Baptist in my boss's house, living with him. I was still in this side garage. It's LA. They don't have basements. That's how I've been in Missouri too long.
Yeah,
I didn't say,
exactly.
I've been in
Actually,
this basement.
Yeah.
This laundry room
Right.
/ side building in Hollywood. And I'm thinking about going to get my master's, and I'm thinking about maybe staying on and just focusing on the fight game and doing MMA. I got buddies who are just starting to do it, and they're kind of making a name for themselves. And I'm like, dude, I could do this too. I was right there with them, and I'm praying about it. I'm like, God, show me. You spoke to me. Show me what I should do, right? And I'm hearing pretty clear. I need to go back to Cal Bap, right? I'm a new Christian. LA is
Right.
not the place for you, right? And I'm like, just let me know. And he's like, yeah, you should go back to Riverside. If you could tell me.
Exactly. Are you
That's when you
yeah,
start
you-
Could you
arguing.
speak?
It's like, please
he's
speak.
all, dude, you hear me, bro. So, man, it's been like 2 weeks, and I'm like, just give me a sign, Lord. And no joke, I am driving to one of my buddy's bachelor parties, and I'm driving my brother William. I probably owe that dude a bunch of money, but I think this is the second car I wrecked of his. So I'm driving. Matter of fact, I wrecked both of my brother's cars. Shout out to my brothers. They're good brothers. I'm driving to a bachelor party, and it's an old Ford Ranger. If you know those Ford Rangers, like the 90s, they got these back ends that are super light. We actually had sandbags right above the tires because they were so light.
My S10 was the same way.
Oh,
Having
man,
Chevy
they're
S10 was the same
they're
way.
death machines.
You have to put sandbags during the winter in them because they won't go nowhere.
So I'm driving, and I swear to you, someone hits me. Someone hits the back end and flips me around. I'm on the freeway. I'm going like 75 miles an hour. Flips me around, and now I'm flipped around, and I'm going backwards on the freeway, right? I'm going backwards on the freeway as fast as you could possibly go on the freeway.
Right.
And this lady's coming towards me, and I can vividly still see her face to this day. Just white knuckles on the thing, screaming and slamming on the brakes. Ah! I am calm. Like, this is one of the calmest, coolest, collected I've ever been in my entire life. I tell her, I'm like rolling like this, one arm on the seat. I've already gear shifted down. It was a stick shift. So I got it in neutral, and I'm like, stop your car, because we're still moving, and she's still like driving with me. And she's like, oh, she gives me a nod like she's going to stop. And I'm like, I got this. Seen one too many Fast and Furious movies. I'm like, Paul Walker. And I whip it. Is it too soon to say Paul Walker? He would think it was funny.
Yeah.
So I whip it. And I didn't know that no one hit me. The tire was gone. The tire had exploded. Like, when I say there's nothing there, like, exploded and shattered.
You're riding on rims then at that point.
Yeah. So when I flipped around and I turned it to the right, so I was pulling it driver's side, and my back just sunk in, dug right into the blacktop, flipped me upside down, and now I'm sliding. Now I'm just sliding.
Still with your arm on the car.
Oh yeah, just hanging out. So I'm flying upside down, and I pop my seatbelt. I stop, and I know I'm in the freeway. I'm on the fast lane. Like, this is all bad news bears, right? And so I look real quick to see if a car's coming. I don't see a car coming, and I actually see one, but it's super far away. And I'm like, they'll see me, they'll stop. As soon as I click my button and I like hit the ground, I flip around, I realize that I'm looking the wrong direction. The car that I see is far away because it's driving away.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my, and I'm army crawling out of this car, and I pop up, and the car's sideways in the road, and there's this Honda coming right towards me and just doing the bounce, beep, 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 just skirting right towards me. And I'm like, whoa, and I hop up. That guy hops out, and he's like, oh my God, that's the craziest thing I ever seen. Anyway, that whole story to say, that was my only means of transportation. I am quite literally maybe 45 minutes away from L.A., 5 minutes away from Riverside. And I'm like, well, looks like that's a sign that I am going back to school, back to escuela. Here we go. So back to school. Did that. Great times, man. 2 years, a year and a little bit over at Cal Baptist as a second assistant over there. Just joyful times, getting to know God. I literally gave up. I gave up talking to girls for 2 years. I was just, man, I was just way too promiscuous as an unbeliever, and I had all these unhealthy ways of going through relationships. So my brother had me going through Wild at Heart. I read Not a Fan, Kyle Idleman, which is a great. Those are two great books. Really, just shaping my newfound relationship with Christ. And then, started getting back into competing, and at the end of that is when I hit my autoimmune breakout, took the job, corporate job, did that for a couple years, and then felt a calling to say, hey, I'm going to do this. If I don't try music now, I'm going to wake up at 50 and say, what if I would have given it a shot? Right. What if I wouldn't have halved it? What if I wouldn't have tried to do gigs while I was working? I already did it once. I had a record deal. Like, I'm not going to ask anybody for money this time. What if I just do it? And so I did. I quit my job, and I actually quit in a meeting with a guy who he showed up. I was a manager of one of our locations, and he showed up to tell all the managers how successful you could be. Like, we did door knocking, and he's like, if you could knock on a door, you could do anything. You don't have to be selling graves and doing insurance policies. This is a great business, but shoot, if you can knock on a door, you could sell anything you want. And the entrepreneur in me is like, oh snap. I do have the guts to go knock on a door. I could sell I'm a children's book author. I could sell my book.
Right.
I'm a musician. I could sell stuff. Let's go. And so literally I start doing math in the room while I'm supposed to be learning how to sell insurance better. And I go, I think I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to quit. Oh my God. I quit the next week and jumped into full-time music. Did that for 3 years. And that was great, man. I was building a name for myself in Northern California. 3 years in, I had 2 tours under my belt, and they're tours that I'm putting on. I'm finding we had a band that we had hooked up with, Kingdom. All my buddies.
What time frame is this?
So this is from 2014 to 2017.
Okay.
I was in California doing commercials, doing acting, doing music, doing PA work, so behind the camera too, just on film sets, literally just traveling around California, having a time. I having so much fun, visiting friends from college, sleeping on their couches, didn't have a house, basically homeless for, 3 years of it. My mom at the time was going through she was getting really bad. Got to spend a lot of time with her and my dad during that 3 years. But you know what? That was a blessing too in itself, because I got to spend some moments with her while she can't speak anymore. She's forgotten how to speak. And I got to spend some moments with her where she could speak. Most of the time she didn't know who I was. Yeah. I looked like my dad a lot. She thought I was my dad most of the time. But sometimes she would know who I am, and she would, I'd be playing music in the church. My dad's a pastor, and she would walk over, and she'd sit down, and she'd listen, and she'd pray a little bit. And then she'd get real distracted, but she'd walk out, and every once in a while she'd give me nuggets. One of the things she told me that's just amazing, and I was going through a rough time during it, because, you think just in dating in general as you get older is hard, but dating without
I don't have a clue. I've been married 31 years.
Dating without a real job, that's tough too.
Yeah, that's true.
And it looks very unprofitable and very not intelligent to pursue like I'm pursuing. I'm 36, man, and I'm still doing this thing. And I had just written a song, and she kind of stood up, and it was silent. I said, what'd you think? She didn't say anything. She kind of looks at me, and this was like a moment of clarity. She said, they're going to tell you to stop. Everyone's going to tell you to stop. They're going to tell you it's not worth it, all the above. Do not ever let this go. Not for anybody, not for anyone, not for me. Just don't.
That's really
don't
good.
ever stop.
That's awesome.
And it was, man, that was tough to hear too, because this is coming from my mom who did stop. She stopped to have a family. Now, I know that my mom loved us from the bottom of her heart, but I also know, just based on that statement, that a small piece of her wondered, what if?
Yeah.
What if she wouldn't have stopped? And that's no detriment to the choice she made. I had great conversations with her about, how my dad, bless his heart, he asked my mom to marry him probably when he was maybe 18, and they got married when he was like 30, 32. He stuck it in. He said, I like her, and I'm going to stick with her, and I'm going to keep asking. And she had just some amazing things to say about my dad when I was younger, because me and my dad didn't get along when I was in high school. So I'd be, he's a piece of crap, and he's always young. And she just set me straight with how amazing of a man he was, and all the above. So I know she didn't fully regret that, but it was great to have that reinforcement of her saying, "Don't ever stop." So all this is happening in California, and I just had my first Super Bowl commercial. I had an Apple print ad that was running. I had like 3 or 4 lower end commercials running in San Francisco. And it was getting to the point where if I was out in San Francisco, or because it was a Giants commercial that ran for the Super Bowl, San Francisco, Giants, huge. And I would be out, and people would stop and be like, "Hey, hold on, I know you. Where do I
Right.
know you from?" And be like, "Oh, you probably seen him in a commercial, or this, or I did this," and or friends would call me on something I didn't even know was out, like, "Dude, what's up?" I'm one of my buddies, good friend from high school. This was a cool moment. He was at AppleCon. So Apple conference does this huge conference every single year, but they announce new products or whatever. And he's a nerd, straight nerd. Chad, you're a nerd, bro. He's a
That's
nerd.
my kind of place.
Yeah,
I love
he
that
he has
stuff.
some stupid tech job. I call him for tech help all the time. Love the guy. And he hits. He goes, "Who are you?" Like, I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm sitting at AppleCom, and I got to stare at your ugly face." And he puts it up. The CEO of Apple is up there talking, and he's explaining a new product. And it's the print ad that I had running. And he's like, "Dude, you're doing it, bro. Just keep it up." Shortly after that, man, God tugged on my heart and said, "We're moving to Missouri." Without getting too much into it, I was planning weddings a lot. Had a wedding planning business, did a friend's wedding. And I had met this girl at the wedding, and she loved Jesus, so we kind of hit it off super quick. Like 6 weeks into it, I'm like, all right, well, she lives in Missouri. I'll check out jobs in Missouri. That ended like right after that, right? But I had already put in some applications just to see what was out here in Missouri. And one came back for a worship leader job. And man, in my quiet time, the Holy Spirit said, "Hey, I want you to take that job." And I was like, "Are you out of your mind? The only person I know in Missouri is some chick who don't want to date me. I'm not moving to Missouri. That ain't happening in a million years."
Right.
And man, he just kept prompting. So I'm like, "Okay, I'll interview. So I fly out, and this is a long story. You stop me, at any time.
Oh, I will. I will. Keep going.
So I fly out for an interview for this Farmington, Missouri. United Memorial was the church. $1,000 a month. That's all they're going to pay me, right? And God's saying, we're going to uproot our life, Super Bowl commercial and all, local notoriety, and we're moving to Missouri. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Like, if we're going to do this, fly out to the interview. Church is small. I'm not feeling it, right?" And I met this guy on the plane, Ezekiel, spoken word, Poets in Autumn. Good dude. We ended up actually doing a film together later on. But we it took a red eye, and we connected in the red eye. And met him at the baggage claim again. And he's like, "Man, I feel like this is divine appointment. Like, we were supposed to meet. Like, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm here checking out a worship job." He's like, "I do Christian spoken word. Why don't you come to the show Saturday night? Because I feel like we were supposed to meet." I'm not saying my stuff's like his stuff is that great.
Yeah.
But he's like, I'm not trying to pump it up. And I'm like, "No, for sure. Like, that's why I came and talked to you again at the baggage claim, because I felt like the Holy Spirit was prompting me to continue the conversation." Man, I go to the interview. I'm like, I don't know. They even asked me, "What would it take for you to move to Missouri?" I said, "God himself will have to come down." Like, I told her straight up, "Listen," and I'm notorious for quitting jobs in the interview.
Right.
Yeah. And I said he would have to come down and say, straight up, sit next to me and say, "Take the job." And I'd been praying about it. I'd been focusing on it. And man, when I say, I keep looking at the camera, when I say God straight came down and said, "Take this job." It was the last skit they did. It was a skit on Paul and Silas and why some people in ministry have to be broken so others don't have to be.
Right.
And man, I'm just like, no joke, weeping. By the way, like Poets in Autumn leans hard African-American crowd.
Right.
I'm the one white boy in there, right? And I'm just like crying. People are getting distance. They're like, "This guy's, I don't know what he's going to do. He's going to shoot up the place." Man,
That's funny.
he said two things. And I felt like he had been quiet. And I don't usually, like I said, I don't usually share what the Holy Spirit tells me directly. But he said, "I see you, and I'm here." And it was basically saying to me, if you want And just to clear the air, anyone listening, when I say the Holy Spirit spoke to me, it's the Holy Spirit is your voice who speaks to you in wisdom, usually things you don't want to hear about yourself, and wisdom that you don't possess.
Right.
And he doesn't talk the way you talk. He said, I see you, and I'm here. And so I said, okay, all right, we'll do this. You know, verbally, I'm saying we're going to do this, but I wasn't fully committed yet.
Right.
You know, I went home.
Are you sure you're not with me in California? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Not
Well,
Farmington, Missouri.
It doesn't make
Holy
any
cow.
sense,
Yeah.
right? No, I was like, none of this makes
Right.
sense.
Especially
And-
Farmington.
and even
you sure
eas-
that wasn't Satan talking to you?
I still got doubts. Because it's been 4 years, and man, I'm still like
I
he's
know
he's
it.
bringing
Yeah.
promises like forth right now that are
Right.
great. But in even Ezekiel, he was from L.A.
Right.
I'm like, I'm in L.A. every other weekend. Why you got to put us on a plane to Missouri to get me to meet this dude? Like, you can do this anywhere you want. Why are we doing
That's
it
cool.
here? Anyway, these are 2 miracles that he made happen to get me to come here. I put a fleece before him. You're not supposed to do that. And this is actually part of the story that you heard that I told on the other podcast is I said, okay, this is crazy. I'm losing my mind. But if you really want me in Missouri, I need about 20 grand. And he wanted me there. It was October, end of October. He wanted me there in January. It's like the job starts in January. Like, okay, well, I need 20 grand. I got to pay off some bills. I had like $36,000 in credit card debt. Did not know how to manage money to save my life. Horrible with money. Just never learned. Never learned. And then I had needed money to get out here too.
Right.
Like I'm sleeping on couches. I have these commercials going, but I'm trying to pop off and write one big check to all these people I owe money to. And my brother's buddy shows up and he's like, "Hey, I got a job for you." And I said, "No, you don't understand. Like, I need some money. Like, I don't need a job. I need like cheese." And he said, "Well, it pays $4 grand a week. I mean, geez, how greedy are you?" And I'm like, "Oh." Well, it doesn't really pay $4 grand a week. It was cleaning up California fires. And at the time, it really was God breaking me because I had this huge beard, like down here, all nice and oiled, had this big pomp going on. And he's like, "Yeah, it's $4 grand a week, but you got to shave your beard because you got to wear a respirator." And oh man, he just broke me. I shaved my beard. I ended up shaving my head. I worked for 2 months, saved it up, and it was after Christmas, just about ready to get into January. And God's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Go." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm making great, like $4 grand a week. I'm making some money right now. Don't you want don't you want me to be a man? Don't you want me to be responsible?
Right.
I could buy a house out there and all these things, right?" And he said, I said, "Go." I said, "Okay, I'm going to put another fleece before you." And again, this is not good theology.
Yeah,
you should not be doing this. Just do what he says. Flip the car on a freeway. Don't be so stubborn. I said, "Okay, somebody in that church has a place for me to rent for $250 a month." And I've confirmed this with Natalie Miller. She was the girl who really had a hand in hiring me. And her husband, actually, Adam Miller, who's a filmmaker that did my last music video. Good. These guys are lifelong friends now. I called her up and I said, "Hey, I think someone at the church has a place. God's telling me someone at the church has a place for me to rent." Didn't give her a price. She comes back. She's like, "We got a weird situation. Our office manager's husband, his mom is in a home and she just needs her mortgage paid. She can't make any money because she's on assistance. So if you pay the mortgage, the house is yours. 2-bedroom, 1 bath." And I'm like, "Oh, what's the mortgage?" She's like, $250. I'm like, "Oh, God." I literally teared up and like I'm in my
That's
brother's
awesome.
kitchen and I hang up the phone and I'm just like crying in the corner of the kitchen. He's like, "What is wrong with you?" I was like, "I gotta move to Missouri." He's like, "Listen, dude, you've been saying that for 2 months. Like, I get it." And I'm like, "No, like I leave." I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
And I was like, "No, I leave Friday. Like I leave tomorrow. I have to be there Sunday. I have 48 hours to get there." And I, no joke, packed up my stuff that night, got in the car, and drove to Missouri. Like literally drove.
And that was 2017.
That was the very end of 2017. And I'm like, I'm here. there was no, like, I had no money left in the bank after that, by the way, because I took all that money that I was making and I put it down on those credit cards trying to get, you know,
Get everything
squared up.
away.
I walked into that house, empty house, sleeping bag on the floor, I got $10 in my bank account. And I am just screaming at the top of my lungs at the sky, just so angry. All my family has told me, like, don't go. This is the biggest mistake of your life. I had two friends that, my buddy Chad and my other buddy Daniel, said they were trying to meet me at the airport. They were like probing when's your flight and blah, blah, blah. Like they were going to have an intervention.
Right.
They thought I was like chasing some chick, and I'm like, I can't even explain to them that it's not that. Like, what do you tell your friends who aren't believers? The creator of the universe is telling me to move to Missouri.
Yeah,
You're just like, this guy's losing his mind.
So you moved here 2017.
Yes, sir.
You're still the worship leader at the church.
No.
Oh, so you moved from there. Okay.
So 2 years. I did 2 years there.
Okay.
And this is how God works. I got about no money, and I was doing Instacart.
Okay.
It was the most humbling experience I've ever had in my entire. I got a master's degree, and I'm like, this person wants frozen yogurt. Okay, and then we gotta find the Coca-Cola.
You know what my hourly rate would be at Instacart? Like it would be like 30 cents an hour because I couldn't find. I was serious as a heart attack.
It's not easy.
I could
It's
not.
not easy, but once you get into it, it's actually
no
not too bad.
way.
My son makes around $20 an hour doing
If
it.
I go to the grocery for my wife, I spend
But-
$400 and I didn't get anything that she needed. Literally, like
it was
that's
so bad.
And maybe
Yeah.
you can build a little bit more than that
That's-
now, but that's now though. So
I
it
wouldn't
used to be
make-
different.
I wouldn't make any money whatsoever.
Well, that's
doing
about
that.
how it was.
Okay.
I thought I was like,
Yep.
I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna make some cash. No. First off, it's Farmington, and it was new in Farmington. There was no one shopping,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then you had to buy their bags. You got to buy their bags to start. So then I was like, and they're 15 bucks.
You're going the whole.
They're 15 bucks a piece, and you had to buy 3 of them. And I'm like, oh, man,
started
there's a
off
credit
in the
card
hole.
again. There's my bad spending habits, right?
That's
Here's a credit card
awesome.
again. I looked everywhere for a job in St. Louis, and I could not find anything that was paying over like 30, you know, and with my student loans, with the degrees or whatever. And I was like, I'm better off doing construction, or you swinging a hammer and making more money than
Right.
that. And I broke down, and I felt God saying, hey, hit up Dignity Memorial, your old company. And I'm like, we left that 4 years ago, man. We walked away from that.
Right.
And he's like, I called you to do worship. You're going to be bivocational. And we talked about this. Like,
Yep.
hey, it's $1,000 a month. That ain't going to pay your bills. You want to pay your bills? Go get a job. He's just growing me up.
That's good.
And so, man, I ended up at another location. I did that for 2 years, and God really blessed me at that location. Blessed me with Natalie Miller helping me get my finances in order. After about 2 years, no more credit card debt. Had most of that paid off, and I was starting to save money.
That's great.
Got turned on to some great books. Anyone who's listening who struggles with finance, Richest Man in Babylon. That is the Bible of finance. Grab your Bible, and then the next book is Richest Man in Babylon. It changed my life completely.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
it got my finances around, and God blessed me and put me into places where people would speak into my life, tell me what books to read, and that's all I was doing. Sleeping on the floor for 2 years, didn't spend a penny I didn't have to, eating rice, beans, like just scraping. Saved up some money, drove 2.5 hours every day commute from Farmington to St. Louis because that's where I was working.
Right.
Did that commute, and after 2 years, I was trying to speed up God's plan for sure.
When you typically do that, you usually get in trouble.
Yeah, well, he didn't, man. He little slap on the wrist, and it was nothing bad. He actually blessed me even further. So I left that church, and it was tough. We had some problems at that church, and I think they're doing much better now. And some of those wounds and hurts have actually been healed from the struggles that we had. I've never faced more spiritual warfare than I've ever faced in those 2 years of me serving at that church. Natalie and Adam, who were there with me, and shout out to Glenn Mohan as well. I spent a lot of nights with them praying and crying and struggling over trying to break some just old hurts that they had there. I walked into 100 years of history.
Yeah, exactly.
Some hippie from
that's
California.
That's hard
right?
to do in a church, and a lot of times we want to come in and just blow the church up and start all over.
Yeah, let's do this.
Sometimes, and that's not always the way. Sometimes it is the way. Sometimes that's what God needs is a new, fresh spirit in the church, and that happens, and it's always good. I counsel quite a, or I shouldn't say counsel. I talk to quite a few pastors. Disciple, them over the phone sometimes, and got quite a few buddies throughout the nation, and you can just tell that a lot of times they start trying to figure out what battle they want to die upon, what hill they want to die upon, what battle they're going to get in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's you just hear that all the time, and unfortunately, that's not only in church, that's in business, that's in families, it's in the school system. You get those, kind of things going on. So it happens.
Well, I wasn't making it easy on them. My first Sunday, they got me, and I'm not even mad at them for it. They pulled a fast one on me. All the pictures I had never seen. So there was a sanctuary, and then there was a fellowship hall. I had never seen the fellowship hall. I had only seen pictures online. They were stock images.
Oh, were they?
I walked in and not what I was expecting.
Great.
And so I'm there like first Sunday, like, oh my God, this was not what I thought. And I probably wear a hat everywhere I go. I have great hair, but I like the way I look with a hat on. Usually a beanie. I'm rocking a beanie. So I'm back there. I'm talking to everybody as we start, and guitar player comes up to me. He's one of the older gentlemen in the church and great guy. Mark really just knows how to love people. And he goes, I just want to tell you, and he's got this accent, I just want to tell you, there's already some people, I'm not saying it's me, but there's already people murmuring about the hat. What are we going to do? And almost in tears, I was like, listen, I'm 2,000 miles away from home. Mm-hmm. I don't know anybody. I'm keeping my hat. So I didn't help the situation at all. I was like, I'm keeping my hat.
Yeah.
But that was great. So I'm trying to quit, and I had already left the church, and I told my boss here in St. Louis, and I told him this day number 1 too. I was like, I'm gonna quit you in a year, too, right? Because I'm like you. I'm moving to Missouri. We're gonna go in. Like, stealth, get in, get out, and then get back to California, get back to someplace, get back to a music town, right? That's what I do. And so I tell him, I'm going to probably move to Nashville. I got enough money to probably buy a house now. I've saved up. God has flipped my finances upside down, and I'm not teaching prosperity gospel. I am teaching Richard Man of Babylon book. Start following those rules. That'll teach you how to use
smart
money.
Spending.
Yeah, smart spending. And I say, I think I'm going to move to Nashville. I got a new producer. Shout out to Ryan Korn, who did my last EP. I think there are 3 singles through him. Does amazing work. And I met him through Natalie and Adam. God just kind of putting some pieces together. And I'm going to move to Nashville. He says, okay. While you are, where are you going to live? I'm looking for a spot. I'll rent something here in the city month to month. A room somewhere, and then I'll move out as soon as I can. And it was probably December. It was December because we were doing our Christmas party. And then my boss's boss found out I was looking for a spot. He said, we have an apartment. Like, the company owns an apartment.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'll look at it. Like, where is it? He's like, it's above a funeral home. I'm like, whatever, man. I sleep on the floor. Like, what do you got? Like, I'm not even worried about it. And so we go check it out, and I'm like, dude, this is actually a pretty nice place. It's not bad. What do you guys want for rent? He's like, I don't know. It's paid off, $250. I was like, oh, we're staying, aren't we? And I'm like, God. And I tried to hide my emotions, but I got back in the car and just took a deep breath. And I was like, we're staying, aren't we? Like, what is going to happen to where how are you going to convince me to stay? Mm-hmm. Because I got the money. I'll rent this apartment, but how are you going to convince me to stay? Right. The next year was 2020. That was the end of 2019.
You didn't have a choice, did you?
By March of 2020, the entire world shuts down. And man, if I would have moved to Nashville, I would have been so screwed.
Yes,
I would have had a new mortgage, no way to make money down there. I would have been looking for another, funeral home, like grave spot. Can I sell insurance around here? Like, what's going on? 2 years go by, and I know a lot of people struggled in 2020, but I had the best year of my life. And that's just so you guys know, we don't make money when people pass away, so it's not like, oh, people died, you made money.
Right,
No.
exactly.
That's not how insurance works in the funeral home business. We only make money when someone does something in advance.
And the great thing about, the way that technology is today is you don't necessarily have to live somewhere else to do, especially with what you're doing outside of touring. There's plenty of stuff, around here. You can get your name out there, different things like that. So now you're worship leader where?
I'm a worship leader now at Middle Tree.
Okay.
So I took about a year off and just worked through COVID, and again, still trying to get to Nashville. 2021 came around, and I'm like, "We're going to Nashville," and he's like, "No, you're not. Shut up, sit down." I ended up meeting a producer out here who does really great work in St. Louis, and he was telling me, shout out to John Strandel, working on with a couple songs with him right now. He was telling me that what you just said, St. Louis is a hub. I can get anywhere in 4 hours. Nashville, 4 hours. I can drive there. KC, 4 hours. I can drive there. California, hop on a plane, 4 hours. I'm there.
You got Chicago
Austin,
right here.
Chicago,
Exactly.
and the airport here, STL Airport is like, I guess I'm putting this on blast. People are going to start moving here. Like, there's no one there.
Right, yeah.
Like, I'm in and out.
You can get it, yeah, exactly.
I park my car and I'm on the plane in a 30-minute time window.
Right.
Like, it's just so easy to move in and out. The living expenses are cheap to be here. It's a hub. So once I met John and we talked about working together, I anteed up and took another worship leader job. So I've been doing that for a year. Middle Tree Church, Pastor Brian Schmidgall, say his name right. He's a great guy. I love working with him. The team there at Middle Tree, their whole concept is what kind of sold me on them. They were in the middle of an African American community and a white community, and they were like, we're right in the middle of this line, this divide. We want Christ's church to be the middle meeting point of those two spots. So, yeah, man, I'm in Missouri. I actually just bought a house, so I'm here.
So you're stuck.
I'm stuck here now, man.
So let's talk about your music. Really, once I heard your interview and then I Googled you back in 2020, the very first song that I heard was called Welcome Fear. And, dude, I'm telling you what, I probably have half of your your views on YouTube because I keep showing people, I keep going to it, and so I want to talk about all your songs, but specifically this one. How did you come up with the concept? Like, where did the lyrics come from, the music, and then I've got I'd like to play some of it for our audience and let them hear it. And
you want to just start with that?
Let's do that.
Play a little bit.
Let's do that. We'll play that, and then we'll stop here in just a minute. You can hear it. This is Samuel Fragoza, Welcome Fear.
When I was a boy, Mama told me I should guard my soul. Now I am a man, and all that remains are pieces to hold. Oh, it's just a memory, no, it's just a rhythm I'm holding inside. Oh, it's just a corner, no, it's just a garden they told me to hide. When the hills are on fire and the heart is a liar, you know it's a liar. It's the one desire. Oh, so get up and and shake it, be bold so you make it. Welcome fear, it'll take you higher. Where do you go when you can't go home no more? Or where will you run, or where will you hide if it ain't your front door? It's just a memory.
So, dude, I love that.
It's so good.
Yeah, I just love the way that sounds. I mean, I don't know why, and I know why. I like the lyrics. Like, I'm a lyrics guy. I was telling you that before the podcast started, man. I just love the lyrics themselves, and you know, there's a moment where you have to have boldness in life in general, and it sounds like you're basically saying, bring on whatever you got.
Yeah, and yeah, you can kill it. Yeah, if you guys, man, if you guys can give me some love, that music video came from my move here. I mean, that album or that single, that music video was all the move here. You know, the story that I just told of how I got here. Right. I mean, there's even little bits of the beginning, you know, of my mom in there. The fact that there's just so many layers. So the song starts out with, when I was a boy, mama told me I should guard my soul. Now I'm a man, and all that remains are pieces to hold. And I feel like that. I was 33 at the time. That's probably 4 years ago. And there's something about being in your mid 30s and single. And, you know, when you go through relationships, I've been very, very close to being married a few times, and
But you've never been married,
never
right?
been
Yeah,
married.
never
It just
been married.
hasn't.
Okay.
It just hasn't played out, and man, it feels like there's just pieces of me left. I had a good conversation with a friend recently of, like, man, it's tough to date because I have so many walls that I've built up over the years, and then I'm an ornery 30. I'm turning 36 this year. I'm an ornery 36-year-old who's set in his ways, you know. So you have that, you know, pulled up next to this step into the unknown. So the single cover is, I think it's a picture of pallets that are burning, but it really looks a lot like a ship is why I chose it. Cortez, Burn the Ships. One of my good buddies, David Razzo, who's one of the only people who told me that I needed to come to Missouri. You know, I told all my friends, my family, they said, don't go. David took a deep breath like he does. He said, man, you're really great when your back's against the wall. Like, you are one of the most tenacious people I've ever met when your back's against the wall. When you're comfortable, you're comfortable. Right. And, you know, it's kind of a, you know, it was a compliment in one hand, but it was a little bit of a backhanded compliment too. When I get comfortable, I get comfortable.
Right.
I
think that
grinding.
happens with everybody.
Right?
Complacency sets in, man, and we just, whether it's with God or whether it's with our job or whether it was a passion or even relationships, you know, marriages, you know, complacency kicks in, and it's kind of like, you know, just, I'm not really going to put any work into it, and nothing really happens after that. You know, it doesn't really grow. You know, that's always my fear with, you know, with teaching and preaching. Like, I don't ever want to get complacent. Man, I want God moving me and, you know, challenging me,
growing you,
growing me. And the same thing with my spouse, you know, my spouse and my children, man. I don't want to get complacent with them. And you can't do that with something like music. I mean, if you get complacent, you see when artists get complacent. Yeah. You know, they're no longer artists anymore. Yeah. You know, and that's cool that he challenged you and encouraged you to step out, you know, in something that's uncomfortable, because that will grow you.
And most of my lyrics too are very uncomfortable. Like, this is a secular song from a Christian perspective. Like, that's the style of my music. People ask me now, hey, you know, what kind of music do you play? Indie pop. You know, they say, oh, I thought you were a Christian artist. I am a Christian artist. And if you're listening to the song at all,
you can hear the.
Oh, man, I'm talking about Jesus. And I literally say his name multiple times in other songs. Right. And there's maybe one or two worship songs that I have, but the stuff that I normally do doesn't play in church. But it is about the stepping out. So fear itself, you hear that old saying, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Like, that's what this is. if you step into fear, you actually find you find greatness. You find things. I wouldn't have this amazing story if I would have sat on my butt in California and said, "Oh, that girl didn't like me," and "Oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just go keep trying to get famous." And I probably would be further along the famous trail right now if I would have stuck with it.
Right.
But I would probably be far less wise. I would have far less perspective. My walk with Christ wouldn't be as tight. I wouldn't have these. I'm telling you
good.
about miracles that, like, man, he has blown my mind. It's stuff that I'm even skipping over. My first Sunday, that Sunday where I wouldn't take off my hat before church service started. The reason I was so bold, like, I'm keeping my hat. A gentleman walked up to me. I got $10 in my bank account, and he says, "Hey, I was talking to God last night, and he told me to give you this. I don't know if you need it, but envelope full of cash." So I
That's
could eat
Just eat,
for
yeah,
the next
exactly.
3 weeks because they weren't going to
Right.
pay me for 3 weeks. Like, there's little sprinkles of just miracles that he's done in my life to get me here.
That's so
And-
good. I remember when my wife and I were getting ready to go to Africa, we were sitting there renting a house, and it was one of those things where I had to put my resignation letter in,
Yeah.
to my job that I was doing. And we put our resignation letter in. I handed it to him, and I walked to my mailbox the next morning, not knowing where we were going to do. We were short about $1,000 on, cash that we needed to have turned in.
Yeah.
Opened up a envelope that was in our mailbox, and sure enough, there was a check for $1,000 from a friend of mine who is a missionary in Africa at the same time.
Right.
It's
and
and
he's just-
God does stuff like that. It's just crazy.
That's cool.
But you don't see those things unless you step out.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next verse that we actually heard was, "Where do you go when you can't go home no more?"
Right.
Like that's the emptiness, and like I had no home. So my dad was no longer a pastor. My mom had, within like a couple months of me moving to Missouri, and this is one of the hardest things that I ever heard was, my mom 3 months in, and I knew as soon as I left something was going to happen, because I just felt that, he told me, like, it's going to be fine.
Right.
When you leave, it's going to get bad, but it's going to be fine. You just get that peace about it. My mom had an episode, had a seizure, and ended up in a home. I literally had to, 3 months in,
Man,
4
that
months
stinks.
in, I had the church actually paid for me to go home.
That's awesome.
I forget who, I'm remembering this right now. I forget who put the bill up on that one, but someone bought me a plane ticket to go home, see my mom. Spent 3 nights in the hospital, sleeping next to her, and walking her through that, which was awful, just horrificness.
Now,
but-
she's still alive?
She is still
She's
alive,
okay.
but again, she's just in a home and,
Right.
and can't speak and can't really take care of herself.
Right.
But that was the feeling. Like, my dad didn't have a home; he had to move into a trailer. So there was no going home. Like, even if I went home, the closest thing to home I could do is my older brother's house, who's always been like a pseudo parent, you
Right.
know. Because I went to college with him, and he kind of showed me the ropes. So he's always been one of those figures, and I know he hates that. Feels like he's got to toe the line for everybody, but I love him for it. Him and his wife, I lived with them for those 2 months that I was working out in California. I lived with them.
Right.
So, well, where do you go when you can't go home no more? You are stuck with just God. It's God and you, and I've never felt so alone, but so close to Him at the same time.
I wish people could understand that. Like, it's such a hard thing to get people to understand
to describe it.
to even describe what having the power of the Holy Spirit indwelling in you, to know that He's there with you, because of your faith in Jesus, that gives you not only hope. That's really what I think more than anything. It gives you the hope that now I know when I die, I'm going to heaven. But not only that, I always have a friend, so to speak.
Yeah.
I always have a friend in Jesus. Like, there's always someone there. There's always that that understanding. And what's even cooler than that is when you really grasp that and you step outside the four walls of your own home, or even in your mind sometimes, there are other brothers and sisters out there that know exactly
what that
what
is.
that hope is and what that is. And now you have this fellowship, which we call the church, that allows you to be able to not feel, like my family is I love my family. My blood family is my life, but also my church is just as much. That's my family as well. And so when you have that, and when you have the Holy Spirit in you, telling you, man, you're okay. Like it's going to be okay. I got you, and you're not alone, and you don't have to feel lonely. So it's really, really cool when you feel that. It's hard to explain to other people. Like, I was just reading a newspaper article yesterday. Actually, it was Saturday. And it's talking about the death rates between 18-year-old and 49 years old for those with non-COVID related deaths.
Okay.
Have increased substantially
Oh.
based on drugs, based on
Depression.
alcohol, based on depression, based
Just
on
in this last
suicide,
couple
just in
years?
the last few years.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Based on hopelessness.
Yeah.
Literally that's all I can look at it. And it's hopelessness, that they don't have the hope that we do.
I think that's the difference. Like, I don't want to misconstrue how lonely you still are. Like when I say, and this is not flattering for any man, like I said, I'm an athlete. I consider myself to be a pretty hard individual. I'm saying weeping, like loneliness that's so bad that you're weeping, and literally like having to reassure the Holy Spirit that I'm not leaving. Like, you want to quit. You want to go home. You want to run to safety. You want to do anything but be in Farmington, Missouri, sleeping in a sleeping bag in an empty house.
Right, exactly.
No furniture. I didn't have a couch for 2 years. Like, legitimately, one room had just like nothing in it. I actually ended up renting that room out to another kid who needed some help. And he had a bed, but I didn't. I slept on the floor. Like, that was the only furniture, was like his bed. And there was like a little kitchenette, like cheap table with 2 chairs. And that was the house, and a piano that I stole from the church.
I don't want people to think that, especially if they're Christians, that they won't go through depression.
Oh yeah.
That they won't feel hopelessness, but it's not near as lopsided.
Well, I don't think it's hopelessness.
It's not hopelessness. It's
because
just,
you have that little.
But I think it's
inkling.
the complacency we were talking about earlier. When we do get complacent, when we do all of a sudden allow the flesh to take over the spirit, those moments will start, feeling like they're a lot bigger than they really are a lot of times. And maybe that's where you were. And there's nothing worse than knowing that your mom and dad are always, all the way halfway across the United States and struggling, and you can't be there for them. So,
well, they're not even a car ride away.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They're a couple days.
Yeah, exactly.
They're a couple days away for me to see them, and I've gotten used to being on my own. I got 3 nephews. I got a niece. It's tough to watch them grow up from 2,000 miles away. Like, that's really, really hard. And man, it is walking towards the fear. It's stepping into the fire. Right. It's welcoming that. The whole line, when the hills are on fire. I got to go back to a Jordan Peterson quote. Who are you going to call when the wolves are at the door?
Right.
When the hills are on fire and the wolves are at the door. He's getting ready
to give his life to the Lord, dude. I've been listening to him for quite some time.
Have you read Maps of Meaning?
I have not.
So Maps of Meaning is a very, very dense textbook on how he compartmentalizes religion and all the above. And he's very much not a believer. And everyone kind of like pegged him as like a Christian at first because he's so introspective and he has all this wisdom behind it. He knows the scriptures actually quite well. And currently, I believe he just sees them as great archetypes excuse me, and great stories to build your life off of. And he's not wrong. They are. But man, that statement of like, this is the whole concept of Man Up Ministries, which is why I loved what you guys are doing. And this is a quote too from John Eldridge. The church has done a really good job of making weak men. We are not. When you think of a strong, tough man,
Right.
the last thing on your mind is a guy who goes to church, and that's our fault.
Right.
That's our problem that we've created as a church, and that's why, man, I go back to dating. That's why Christian women aren't attracted to Christian men, because they're not men.
They're not, yeah.
There's a low key epidemic of, and this is all social media stuff, right? Just me following TikToks and whatever. And I'm everywhere. I just shouldn't be on social media so much. We were talking about my screen time. It's just horrible.
Yeah, I'm going to look at mine real quick.
Oh, my. I'm terrified to look, man. I'm terrified to look. I'll look while I'm talking.
You're supposed to be on social media fast.
No, I'm done.
You're done. You're done with it
I'm
now.
done.
Okay.
I've only been off for like a week. It's already
He went from
horrible.
fast to gluttony.
Oh, it's gluttony for sure.
So
but there's a bunch of accounts that are
5 hours and 41 minutes.
Oh, dude, I'll triple you easily.
I've been trying to watch it.
There's a bunch of different accounts that are talking about the struggle that single Christian men have. They're like, we can't even get these Christian girls to date us. Like, these Christian girls, they want to date these bad boys and try to fix them. Well, part of the problem is, like, you don't have an edge anymore.
Right.
Like, I really love Jesus, but I will double leg you into a wall if I have to.
So we literally have 878,000 followers on Facebook. 63% of our followers are women.
That's crazy. They're trying to figure out how to get their man to man up.
Man up. Yeah, they're either trying to figure out how to get their man to man up, or they want to know what a godly man is. And that's part of the problem is the church is not showing what a godly man is. We don't have enough men living a godly, a holy, a righteous life, learning to grow in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ. And they're not imparting that into their marriage, and they're not imparting that to their kids. And that's a scary thing, because we need more and more of it for sure. Hey, Rusty, hand me that cup over there real quick.
Well, it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see, like, some of these conferences, like yours. A few men in my church over at Middle Tree, they just suggested, "Hey, there's a men's retreat. We got to do this. Like, how do we speak to our men, and what do we do for our men?" And this is not to say that women's ministry is not important, but if you do focus on men's ministry, the women's ministry really takes care of itself. It's like, if a man is acting correctly, his wife is pretty happy. Like, happy wife,
totally.
happy life. If she's unhappy because her man's not acting correctly, and he's wilding out. We have, man, there's people who are in the church who still, it's not that bad if I go to a strip club.
Right.
It's like, dude, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
It is bad.
Hold up. Forget religiosity. But I was reading something the other day just on the studies of what, like, pornography and the dopamine and the unnatural, that stuff doesn't happen in real life.
No.
Like, you're not, that dopamine connection that you're making, it's unhealthy pathways that you're making
It's
you're not.
pretty much the same pathway as heroin.
That's exactly
and
what
that's
that was
the
saying,
issue.
yep.
And there's more than one problem with pornography. It's it typically will do one of two things to men. It'll either make them the minute man, or with their spouse or with their girlfriend or whatever, and 1 minute in, they're done. And because they're in their head, all they can picture are
These other things,
all these
yeah.
other things. And the second thing is that they, because of the screen, because of the pornography, because what they're watching, it doesn't turn them on. That's the other problem. Now their spouse who's doesn't want to.
Now they're impotent.
Yeah, they don't want to do all the stupid stuff that they see on, pornography. And how sad is it that, your wife could be laying in the other room and you're watching porn?
Yeah.
Like, that's a total sidebar, but I'm just saying, like, that's pretty sad.
Well,
Pursue your spouse, pursue your wife as much as you do trying to hide
Yeah.
pornography.
Well,
Imagine that.
I'm not sitting here saying that like, oh, I'm above pornography. Like, I'm a 36-year-old single dude. I struggle.
I was
brother.
addicted big time.
Yeah.
And only by the grace of God did he get me out of that. You
Yeah.
know, I have porn blockers on every one of my devices. If I were to look up something right now,
You get some phone calls.
it would go to my wife and my elders.
Oh yeah.
So
You're good.
yeah, exactly. So I got to be careful with that. But yeah, so let's go back to your music. The conference that we had last year, and then you came and did it, and you did worship, and then you also did a set where you literally just sat down at the piano and you sang your songs and you told the stories behind it.
Yeah.
And man, I was really, most people were moved by, what you did and how you shared with it and where you're potentially headed to. The one song that you and I talked about prior to the podcast, what was the name of that song? Drunk. Okay.
Yeah.
A very open and honest song.
It's going to be a big hit in the Christian community.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not.
Well, I think, for me, again, I'm a lyrics guy. I love the lyrics, and it just really resonated with me because, it's an honest conversation is what it is. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, just with yourself and just with the world, and you're having this conversation, you're being very vulnerable, where most people, and that's what I don't like about Christianity a lot of times, is that we want to be so staunch and so, haughty-taughty, and the next thing you know, we have this air of Pharisee in us, where we're standing on the street corner praising God,
Yeah.
raising holy hands so everybody can see us, instead of being open and honest.
I like to call it a pharmaceutical prescription for life.
Right, exactly.
know?
Yeah, exactly. One of the greatest stories I think in the Bible, where it talks, especially about that, is when the guy's standing there and he's like, and there's another guy kneeling with him at the altar, and he's standing up. He's like, "Dear Lord, thank you. I'm not like this guy next to me."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's Kyle Idleman, not a fan.
That's not a fan.
There's
Yeah.
a
that
whole
part of that? Yeah,
there's
it's
a
part of
whole
that book.
chapter.
And that's where I love that story, because the other guy's just saying, "I am broken. I'm broke. I'm broken. I don't know where else to go. I'm laying it all out in front of you." And the way that you wrote this song feels like that's the way that you were.
Well, I say it's tough to say were.
Or yeah,
Like,
yeah,
am.
exactly.
Like, it's a
Is.
concept.
Yeah,
I wrote
exactly.
this song. Now, I want to be clear. I don't struggle with drunkenness, meaning the desire for me to go get plastered, gone. I have that. I mean, I'm getting older too. That's probably a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
That sounds miserable.
Hangovers
the
in
next
2 or
day,
3 days.
a couple
Yeah,
glasses.
exactly.
Yeah, if I have a couple glasses of wine at dinner, I'm like, oh, I better hydrate before I go to bed.
Right.
But this song does come from spots where, if lonely, sometimes when I am lonely, I will grab a drink. And if I do have too many drinks, it's typically by myself. It's by myself, and I have, this is so nerdy. I gave my buddy Chad crap about being a nerd. I'm a nerd too. I play video games with my college buddies.
Okay.
And so if I'm having a drink, it's probably with them. They're not there.
Right.
But I'm online
Right.
playing video games with them, sitting by myself having a drink, and we're up till like 2 a.m. just being idiots,
Right.
right? And so I'll preface it with this. The song chorus is, when I get drunk, I get less lonely, little more sad, but a lot more heartbeats. Even though it's hard to sleep, it's hard to dream, it's hard to breathe. When I get drunk, I get less lonely. So this
That's so good.
It's this.
I love your voice.
Well, you're
love it.
you're inserting. I mean, you were there at the conference.
Yeah,
so you're
I was.
inserting the piano and all the
Yeah.
other things with it. But
That's so good.
you know, it's the verse: "Waking in the morning, pressure filling my head.
Yeah.
I can feel sin progressing. It's plotting my death. It's not what I want. It's not what I'm wanting, or a love of regress. It's a heart that's hurting, wanting life to arrest. Like there are times that I still struggle with. Man, I don't want to be here.
Right.
Like
I think everybody struggles with that from
Yeah.
from time to time, depending on the situations.
And so we get this idea, and I do. When I have a couple drinks, you know, like I said, I'm a cigar and whiskey person. If I have maybe 3 whiskeys, which is a lot for a guy my size, I feel a little less lonely. Like I'm happy. Like,
Right.
you know, a lot more heartbeats, but a little more sad.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, like, I'm not lonely because I'm usually like chatting it up with my
Right.
buddies, or I'll have a whiskey and I'll play the piano and I'll put on a concert for myself, and or I'll FaceTime my brother back home. But man, there's a little more sad. I'm a little more sad, but I feel a little bit more alive. Right, more heartbeats because I'm alive.
That's the crazy thing about alcohol,
Right?
You
It
know,
does that to you.
It does all those things too. I'm an alcoholic. I can't
you can't
drink
even
at
play
all.
with it.
I can't
Yeah.
even look. I haven't had a drink in 17 years.
Good for you, man. It's
It was
huge.
2000. I guess it was 2004. I'd given my life to the Lord in 2003 and 2004. You were talking about jobs earlier, you know, quitting jobs and all that kind of stuff. My last corporate job was 2004. Lord told me to quit drinking, and I was going on. I was going
tell
on.
me
Did
this
I tell you this story?
Yeah, because I have a similar one. I like it. Get it.
And so I was going to this corporate meeting in Virginia, and like all the guys throughout the week were calling, Jody, you coming to the meeting? I was
You're
like,
like, "Get
yeah. And here I'm telling my wife the whole time, like, I've got to quit drinking. Like, I'm a Christian now, and I've got to quit this. And I think I'm going to step up and help the youth out. And they can't see me drink. And so I'm battling, you know, me and God are battling with this. Like, you know, because I came into Christianity going, you can't tell me that I can't have a drink. You know, I do understand that I can't get drunk, but
Yeah.
you can't tell me I can't have a drink.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had this battle going on.
Because
and
it's tough to fight that because you're like, yeah, that's biblical.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
you can
But
do that.
you know,
yeah, you're
I'm also,
arguing with God, right?
I'm also
That's an argument with
I'm
God.
also justifying. You know,
Oh, yeah, of
the
course,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Because I'm thinking, 2 or 3 drinks, and you
Yeah.
know, how drunk is drunk? You know,
Mhm. Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm like trying to figure out the how,
That's how you know you're probably not
how-
in a good spot
yeah.
when you're like trying to get the formula. Where
how
you're just
close
right
can
there.
I get to it's not a sin? Like that's where I really want.
I want to party. I don't want to party.
Yeah.
but I want to party.
And so
a
I go to this
lowercase p.
weekend, and my wife prays for me. I get on the plane, I get there, and I'm not on the ground 15 minutes, and we're already just sloshing it up. And it was a German company, and in my drunk,
They like to drink.
yeah, exactly. So we were drinking big time,
Yeah.
but somehow when I got drunk, I said something about Hitler to my German company, and so.
You
This
said something about kicking your butt in
yeah,
World War.
exactly. They were talking about the American soccer and
How
German,
bad we are.
German soccer, and I think they beat us at that time. And I said, well, what about World War II? We kicked your butt, blah blah blah, and Hitler this and Hitler that. And so that Tuesday, I had a meeting with my boss. He showed up here in St. Louis and had the old infamous breakfast meeting.
Oh,
And so
That was about it.
After we got done, and he came to me, and it's not my proudest moment ever.
Oh, of
like
course
this whole
not.
weekend, just kind of. So I get fired on that Tuesday, and he's like, "Man, I need to get your laptop and all this
So
kind of
ben,
stuff."
ben just popped up, says, make sure you tell about the laptop.
Yeah. We go to my car, and he's parked about 10 cars down, and I'm down here, and I take my laptop like a frisbee, and I slide it down the parking lot. I was like, here's my laptop. And
Real good Christian
yeah,
man.
real good
Oh,
Christian.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and
okay.
so
It's on edge.
so that was that weekend was the last time I had a drink, and
Good for you.
you know, I was still working on all those things, and I say all that to say that, you know, that there's those moments where, man, sometimes you've got to, you got to take a stand and get those things out of your life. For me, I can't have a drink.
Yeah.
I can't drink. I couldn't even have a glass of wine
Well,
because I know where I would
you know
go.
where you're gonna
I know
go.
exactly where I would go. I never drank because I enjoyed the taste. I drank to get drunk.
Yeah, that's
And and
something.
thinking of your song was always that, I wanted to be the life of the party. I wanted people to know who Jody was. I wanted, I'm not kidding, dude. We would sit down for dinner, and before the appetizer got there, I had 2 Maker's Marks down, just like that.
yeah.
Boom, gone.
Yeah, that's
And
not. Yeah, again, that's you're drinking to drink.
I was drinking to drink, and
to drink.
I got drunk.
Yeah.
And I hated those days.
Yeah.
I look back on it, and sin is fun.
Yeah,
For a
time.
season, and
yeah.
those moments, I just kept going and going and going, and so
What comes out of it? What comes out of drinking to get drunk is never profitable.
right.
And this again is not an anecdote or a solution. It's funny that you said that you. When I gave my life to Christ, I gave up a lot too. Talking to girls for a couple years. I gave up drinking for 2 years.
Right.
It might have even been 3. At the time, I was working for Cal Baptist, so it was super easy. Because they have a no drinking policy
Right.
for all staff, and so that was pretty cake. And I forget when I started because I had those thoughts of like, well, hold on, it's in the Bible. I know it's okay, but I had that thought: I used to drink like that. Is that what I'm going to do with it again if I get it?
Right.
If I have a drink, is that what's going to happen?
Right.
And I think I had one with my brother, and I had one. And we just sat and talked. Probably, we actually ended up talking theology till the wee hours of the night. I for the time, and that's not to say that at some point God will tell me to, all right, no
Right.
more. But
There's definitely a certain time that in a Christian's life, especially if they're growing in the grace and knowledge, I think He will tell you, to stop.
Yeah, and
because there's enough. I've always been of the adage, what good has alcohol done? For a lot of people, if we're using it to, the Bible says be sober minded, and that's in all things. And again, I mean, we could go down a total rabbit trail there, and I'm not condoning,
yeah, and
I'm
not. You're not condoning it, and I'm not promoting it.
I'm not, and I shouldn't say condemning you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm not telling everybody to go out. Hey,
Right,
if you're a
exactly.
Christian, you haven't drank yet. Now's the time
Yeah,
to go grab. No, hold on. Like
Exactly.
the Holy Spirit, man.
Right.
When I say
when
I say
if you're
there's-
listening, man,
Yeah.
He's going to tell you one day, because there, as a Christian, there is the above reproach mentality that we have to have a lot of times, and that's God's timing. God's gonna do those in your life, and for me, it was 17 years ago, and again, I don't think having a drink is a sin. I think we've got to be very careful with with the addictive personalities that people have.
Oh yeah.
Americans don't do anything in moderation.
No.
Like
We're not great at it anyway. There's some people who do, but
just look at the drive-through.
Historically we don't. And it's
Large,
interesting.
extra large.
Like I've seen, and especially people in ministry, like I've seen God ask certain things of some people and not of
others.
And not of
I
others.
agree 100%.
Like there's been and this is the thing, like, man, when you sign up to do whatever He says. Like if he tells me to stop drinking, I'll be like, oh, that's a bummer, because hopefully he doesn't say cigars, because I really I like those too.
Right.
But you got to be down for
I've always
whatever.
told people that it doesn't say in the Bible that you're going to go to hell for smoking, but you may smell like you've been there. So.
That's okay. I like the smell. That's good. Man, you have to be willing. Like, man, I picked up everything and moved to the middle of the country.
Yeah, you did.
If He says change your choice of beverage,
I think you're going to.
I'm going to do whatever the man
You're a
says.
person that's going to listen to Him, and again,
100%.
I think that's cool. But this song that you wrote is literally, because that's what alcohol does to you. There are times that it makes you feel, like you're not lonely,
Mhm.
and then it makes you sad. Like
Yeah.
in the lyrics that
So-
you had there.
So this is great. The second verse of this song, and I don't want to. I mean, the song's not even out. Probably John somewhere going, "Shut up, dude. We're not done with that thing." But the second verse of the song starts talking about other things that replace alcohol.
Right.
Social media,
Mhm.
attention.
Yeah.
We have all these other things that this. I was looking. I really tried to find my screen time. I do not have.
Just
There it is.
swipe-
Perfect.
there you go.
Perfect timing. Oh, that's pretty rough. 7 hours.
Is that just today?
That is the last 2 days.
Last 2 days,
There you
yeah,
go.
because
That's
we're on
7
second
hours.
day.
So I'm pushing 4 hours a day on social media. Now I podcast. I'll listen to podcasts on here. I do YouTube videos on here. I drive. I listen to Spotify. So there's a lot. But there ain't no difference.
Right.
If you're out there and you're sitting there, we talked about Kyle Idleman, and you're listening to this. The chapter that we're talking about is, I think the title of the chapter is "You Might Be a Pharisee If."
Yeah.
And then it goes through, you might be a Pharisee if you said, "God, thank you I'm not homeless.
Right.
God, thank you I got money.
Mhm.
God, thank you I don't struggle with addiction." You might be listening right now and be like, "Wow, Jody's
Right.
an alcoholic. Thank God I'm not an
Right.
alcoholic."
Exactly.
Well, you might be a Pharisee because the Bible says, "I say you should not commit adultery." But if you even think about adultery, you're unclean, period. The only way
Yeah.
you're getting into heaven is if Jesus speaks on your behalf. So you're no Rose.
Exactly.
I
And that's
got
the problem with the church today is that I can easily pick on alcohol, but what about pride?
Oh yeah.
What about unforgiveness? What about there's so many things that we tend to, or gluttony.
Gluttony.
I mean, holy cow! Every church has a banquet or potluck or what are they? Not potluck. They call them pot. What do they call them?
I don't know.
They don't- A lot of churches don't believe in luck.
Uh,
Pot. Oh shoot! What was that?
Fellowship dinners.
Yeah, fellowship dinners, whatever,
Yeah.
and then we overeat always, and so there's all kinds of stuff, and
Well,
that's
while
where
we're on this is, as far as your music and stuff, is there a place that people can go listen to a few of them now?
Yeah. So I'm on Spotify.
All right, we'll go ahead and add that link.
You can add the link on Spotify. There's you can add the link to the music video. I think I sent you that one
Yeah,
over.
we've added that. so.
My Instagram is where I do most of my, hey, what's up? Go here.
Okay.
That's like the spot. And
so-
I'm excited on what we have moving forward. I try to be super honest. I try to be super raw. I am by no means. I tell everybody when I do my shows, I'm like, if you think I'm up here telling you because I know, I'm up here because I'm a mess.
right.
Like I'm a mess, and God uses messy people all throughout the Bible.
That's good.
He just uses messy people.
Right.
So
Exactly.
he's using me that way. People who know me would be like, "Dude, that guy's a piece of crap." Well,
Yeah.
I know. That's why I got.
Yeah,
That's why I got.
exactly.
I know. I said that myself. Why you coming? I don't understand why you're coming at me like that. I am a piece of crap. I'm being pretty honest about that.
Right.
So I have my faults. I have my struggles, but I want to be honest enough to talk about them in the music. And sometimes it doesn't play well in church.
Well, I think that's that Pharisaical mentality. Is like if the church were authentic, and they were open and honest, and again, we have to see growth. It's not that we continue to live in the same sin and not actually work on it.
Yeah.
God's gonna work on it. That's the great thing about sanctification is He's gonna grow you as He needs to.
Yeah.
And so, thank God He doesn't say, "Hey, y'all can come into the church when you get clean."
Yeah.
Like, oh my,
No one's
God.
in
Yeah,
here, yeah.
exactly. And so
It's an empty
that's-
building. Yeah. What are you doing in here?
yeah, exactly. I know.
I was just
I
saying
know.
that's actually really good. There's a song out, and a lot of it's on the radio, but it's "Truth Be Told." If you ever hear the first lyrics of that, says, if the church acted like it was truly supposed to, the church would look more like a hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you'd have people coming
Hurting
in
people.
and hurting
Yeah.
people, and that's always
Exactly.
been really cool.
Well, that's
So-
what it. I feel like that's what it should be. There's and I talk about this at every show too. I kind of lay it out for people. There's a song I play called "Secrets,"
Yep.
right? And I say, and I ask everybody, hey, raise your hand if you have a secret that you want no one to know. A secret that you're going to probably take to your deathbed because you don't want anyone to know. And there's usually like 3 or 4 people out of 100,
Right.
you know, who will be brave enough to raise that hand. And I'll say, I want you to look to your left, look to your right. If the person next to you is not raising their hand, their secret is they're a liar.
Right. Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, it's like, we're all in the same boat.
Dude,
So
the night you did that at our conference, I'm talking men were broken. Like after that, I prayed with, I can say at least 10 guys that were like, I got to get rid of this sin. And even since then, they are continuing not to be in
That's
those
awesome.
sins. And so that was a great segue into our worship time and our altar time at that conference, man. It was freaking awesome.
And I'm not, like, I don't put them on the spot and then don't own it. Like, I tell them, I'm
right.
like, this song I'm about to sing is about, like, secrets. Like, I got demons, man. Like, like, I'm waging. The last line of the song is, you know my secrets, you know my weight, you know the demons I wage. Like, man, it's a constant fight and a battle. And I feel like the church needs to be more honest about those things from even their leadership.
Right.
You know, thank God we're not required to uphold the Levitical law.
Right,
Like, my clothes right now aren't even flying. I got like 3 different types of cloth on. It's not a good look. And man, when we stand before the Creator, He's, you know, even if you're listening, let's say you're not a believer and you're listening right now. Let's say you're in a hypothetical place with a hypothetical God, and He's created this great place, and let's call it heaven. And you're standing outside, and He's like, "Why should I let you in? It's perfect. This place is perfect. Why should I let you, you know, Samuel Fragoza? Why should I let you in?" Well, as Christians, we usually start checking the list.
Right.
Well, I read my Bible. I went to church. I love my wife. I gave tithes. I went to Africa that one time. Russ, you were talking about I went to Africa. Man,
Yeah.
I give to missions all the time.
Been there.
I was like, that's great. You know, you're finding righteousness in the things that you've done, you know, in yourself.
Right.
We have a word for that in the English language. It's self-righteous.
Right.
You're self-righteous, man. The Bible says that our good deeds, all those things that we just listed off, are like filthy rags. And the Hebrew of filthy rags is quite literally menstrual rags. You know, PG-13 rating here.
Right, exactly.
But I always, anytime I get in a spot where I feel like I'm doing great, I'm knocking it out of the park, I try to picture Mother Teresa standing in front of the gates of heaven with a life supply of her used tampons. And this is what I have to offer the kingdom.
Yeah.
That's what I have to offer the kingdom of God. And God's like, I'm good. You know, unless you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, you can keep all that.
Right.
Because He doesn't need us.
Right.
We get to help and we grow from helping. But man, He doesn't need me to spread. You know, He uses me because I'm a mess.
Yeah. And it's definitely because of the relationship with Jesus. By faith, you're saved. Like, that's what people would just grab a hold of that. And then because of your salvation, man, He's going to sanctify you, and you're going to want to work, and you're going to want to love, and you're going to want to give, and you're going to want to do all these things.
But the problem is, the first thing that comes first is recognizing that you're a mess, and that's hard for
exactly.
like some of the hardest things for unbelievers to do is to let go of this idea that you can earn it. Because we have this, like, everyone has this built-in self-righteousness, and it's like it's from the fall of man, right?
Exactly.
This built-in idea that I am good enough. Now, I'm all about self-help. I'm all about, you know, proclaiming and affirmations and all the above. Like, you've never met anybody as crazy as me. Every time I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror, I go, "You're the man, bro." Like, I got vanity like no one's business. So yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, self-affirmation is great, but it's from a place of knowing that I tell myself, like, "You're the man. I'm the man. I got this." But at the same time, I know that there is nothing good in me.
Amen.
And everything that comes out of me that is good, every good gift and every perfect gift comes from above. Like he's molding me, he's making me. The things that I did, the only way I could do the things that I did in athletics was to think I'm the man.
Amen.
It's the only way you can do it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I believe fully in that stuff. I'm not saying be.
It's like I said not too long ago, my drill sergeant, you say, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you do good.
There you go.
Exactly.
That's gospel right
That's
there.
gospel. Well, I tell you what, man, we're getting close to the end of our time here. And I want to, first of all, a new mug that we have right here. Check this out. Got that, Gabe? All right. I also have the shirt. So on our
Iron sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron.
Get it.
And then Iron sharpens iron mug. On our website, manupmerch.com, you can get new scripture shirts that we have there. You can get the coffee. You can get the thermoses. You can get the coffee cups. We've got all kinds of good stuff there. We'd love for you to go there. And
I was going to ask,
download.
Samuel, is there a place where people can go like to support your music and what you're doing?
Tell us
real
about
quick,
that.
Yeah, real quick before we bounce out.
Yeah.
Most of the money that I bring in, or at least a good majority of it, goes to obviously recording, making music. I'm not making money off what people give me. It goes to Agape International Missions, and it goes to create music or create content. I never put money in my pocket for it. I'm bivocational. I make a very comfortable living doing insurance stuff. So you can go to my website. I have a link for it. I think I sent you.
Yeah, we just posted it in the chat.
Awesome.
So
I had
get to
somebody
it.
swoop my website name off GoDaddy. I don't know how they got it. It was on a renewal. I think my credit card got stolen. They
dude.
bought my domain
Did
name.
they really?
Yeah.
Now they want to sell it to you for $3,000.
Yeah, I'm in that spot.
Exactly.
But Rusty's got a link to it. You can always pick it up on my social medias or whatnot. Agape International, I do want to plug them before we get out of here. They have they stop sex trafficking. They're based out of Cambodia. I wear one of these bracelets pretty much everywhere I go. Every show that I do, you'll see one on my wrist. The girls who are rescued from sex trafficking, they have to have a way to make money. They've been trafficked since they were 5 years old sometimes. That's the only way they know how to make money. Agape International and AIM put together this a separate company called Anthem. And Anthem has jewelry, has clothes that these girls make, puts them to work after, gives them commerce, gives them a skill after they've been rescued. So they first get rescued, then they go to the restoration house, and after that they go to Anthem to actually have a job and not have to go back. Because a lot of the girls go back to sex trafficking so they can eat, so they can live. Money, they have no way to make money. So, Rusty will put the link in there.
It's already in there.
Awesome.
Good job.
You guys can give me it's $5 a month, and that money goes towards those causes and me creating more content. And I always tell people it's a cup of coffee.
Amen.
Buy me a cup of coffee a month. And help me make some more music.
That's awesome, dude. Well, man, it's been a pleasure here. I'm so glad.
Flew
I can't
by,
wait.
bro.
It
2
did.
hours is nothing.
I can't wait for the future with our conferences that we're going to do and some worship sets and different things like that. I know God's got some big stuff for us, so I'm excited.
Heck yeah.
Amen.
Amen, brother.
All right. Well, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the social media platforms. And we look forward to next Monday. Got some great guests coming up in the month of February and in the month of March. So join us for Man Up Monday, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time.
You've been listening to the Man Up God's Way podcast. Visit us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and our website at manupgodsway.org.